My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Apocalypto, and this review will have spoilers, so there's your warning. But this is a movie that when I saw it for the first time, I knew nothing about it, nobody really talks about it, and I was blown away by just how good it was. And whenever people talk about the best action movies of the past 2 decades, they mention Mad Max Fury Road, they mention The Raid Redemption, they mention the Mission Impossible movies, they mention Dread, they mention Casino Royale, and all rightfully so. Those movies are all terrific. But nobody brings up Apocalypto, and it should be in the conversation. And I just love how this is a movie of two halves. You get the more heavy, tragic story in the first half, but the second half of this movie is just non stop action. It's like Mad Max in the jungle, and it's fantastic at that. But this movie does set everything up very well. I love how the interactions between the characters in the beginning are actually quite funny. The type of pranks they're pulling on each other make me laugh. And you care for the character as he's got a wife, he's got a kid, and his wife is about to have another child. And when things go wrong, you feel the weight of it. You feel that his entire world has come crashing down. And the fact that his wife and his kid go into a well to hide and get stuck down there, that adds a race against time element to this movie that I think is so desperately needed. And just as this genocide is going on in this village, it's horrendous. People are getting beaten, it's brutal, it's relentless. There's a guy who picks up a kid and just, I'm glad the camera cuts away, but it just makes you sick to your stomach. And the movie really makes you feel the weight of the situation. And the bad guys are so horrendously evil, you just want them to suffer. And so they get all the adults, but they leave all the kids behind, and these kids are just so lost. They don't know what to do. They follow the adults around for a little bit, but eventually they just get left behind, and you just hear them crying, and it's tough stuff. Like, you really feel the emotion behind it. And the fact that we just see them making their way to this temple, I know not a lot is going on in this sequence, and I have some pacing issues, but you feel the distance that they've traveled since their village got attacked, which is so needed for the second half of this movie because you want the character to get back, and you have to feel the distance in some sort of way. So I feel like the first half of this movie sets that up so perfectly. And then the second half of this movie is just a non-stop chasing. It is adrenaline fueled, it is thrilling, it is tense, it is exhilarating, and it is just incredible stuff. When I was watching it, I'm just like, this is what the second half of the Hunger Games should have been. I love the Hunger Game movies. The first one is my least favorite, but my biggest issue with it is that as soon as the movie picks up, it actually gets as less exciting as a movie does. And I wish it delivered on something similar as this movie does. You know, it's not just these people fighting each other, but it's also man against nature, man against beast, and so many different elements at play, and it's so thrilling to watch. And there's just this one scene where he's getting chased and he comes across a waterfall. So we get the scene where he jumps down and he starts yelling at the bad guys. And in most movies, the bad guys are just like, dang, he outsmarted us. But in this one, they're like, okay, let's jump like he did. And it's such a small moment, but it's really great. And I just love the character arc of Jaeger Paul. I probably mispronounced that name, but the fact that he's never been the best at hunting, and now he has to save his wife, save his kid, and he's got to survive to do so, so he's got to take on these guys. And just watching him use the environment to take down these people is so awesome to see. When he sticks those needles into the frog and then he shoots them out of his mouth, and when he beats that one guy, I know this is not a popular opinion, but I've never been the biggest fan of Predator. I think it's fine. It's not a bad movie, but I don't think it's this classic that people make it out to be. And I feel like this movie delivers on a better version of Predator. So, yeah, I just think it delivers on the emotional weight needed for the first half. It sets the stakes and the characters in the story up really well. And the second half is just non-stop action, and it's just so well built up to. Like I said, you feel the distance that they've traveled and the distance he has to go to get back. And it's great. And I do love the ending of this movie. Like, it doesn't really end on a good note for the characters because we know what's coming next, but I think it's a very ballsy ending and one that really works for me. And there's this whole element to this movie where you just see how this world was like. The nature of conquering and taking people as property and just using people as sacrifices and just how relentless and awful it all is. And it showcases that very well. But I do love the direction by Mel Gibson. I think it looks great. I love the handheld camera. It really immerses you in the chaos going on. The production design, the makeup, the costumes is all really great. And I love how this movie is in the language. It immerses you in this time period. And I just love seeing this culture on display. I don't know how accurate it is, but in context of watching this movie, it's really well done. And I love the brutality of it. There's two shots in particular. One is when one person jumps off the waterfall and he crushes his head, and it's just a really brutal second. And then there's this one moment where this guy gets his head bashed in, and you can tell there's a hole in his skull and the blood's just spraying out. And yeah, it's really effective. And the cast also does a really good job, which is saying something because this cast is made up of a bunch of no-name actors. You've got Rudy Youngblood as Jagar Paul, almost the main character, and I think he carries this movie incredibly well. You've got Dalia Hernandez as his wife, who's also really good. Will Trujillo as Zero Wolf, who is the main bad guy here, and he's just got this menacing physique to him. He feels like a threat. And you've also got Gerardo Terracina, who plays Middle Eye, and he plays one of the main bad guys, the main one's son, and he does a really good job too. So, yeah, I do really love this movie. I do have a few issues, and one of them is one I slightly mentioned earlier, but it's the pacing of the first half. I understand that it's needed to set certain things up, but there's a point where it just feels like it's dragging on. Like, could we pick up the pace a little bit? There was this one moment with this little girl that could have easily been cut out, and I think they could have cut out about 20 more minutes of this movie. And even though I like the story we get and the character work we get is fine enough, I do wish there was a bit more to these characters, a bit more to make them stand out. So I would have liked that. So it's not a perfect movie, but it's still one that I feel like not enough people have seen and deserves more credit. It's adrenaline fueled, it's tense, thrilling, exhilarating. It delivers on the action while still having a solid foundation with lots of emotional weight to this movie. It does have some pacing issues, but I still highly recommend it, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a 7.5 out of 10. Okay, Apocalypto. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon. And Gavin, out.